You're with Radio Sri Lanka. It's time for the Buddhist sermon this Sunday evening, this special full moon Poya day. The Buddhist sermon today is sponsored by Mrs. Sita Gunavardhana and Mr. Sunil Udayakumar Gunavardhana of number 12 Barnsdale Road, Leicester, LE41AR in England. This meritorious sponsorship is made in memory of the late Mr. Justin Thissa Vijay-Singha, their younger brother, who resided in Japan and who passed away on the 8th of September in 2024 by an accident unexpectedly in Sri Lanka. His first-year death anniversary is followed by the noon almsgiving and the sermon on the 8th at the Dharmashoka Buddhist Viharya in Leicester, England. May he attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. The Buddhist sermon is sponsored by Mrs. Sita Gunavardhana and Mr. Sunil Udayakumar Gunavardhana of number 12 Barnsdale Road, Leicester, England. And today's Buddhist sermon is delivered by the Venerable Nugegoda Kalyanajoti Thero.
The Buddhist sermon is delivered by the Venerable Nugegoda Kalyanajoti Thero.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Namo Buddhaya, everyone. Today we are going to learn a few things about what the Buddha taught us. And we are going to have a special focus today on the concept of effort. Effort is a normal word that we use in our daily lives, but in the Buddhist terms, effort is something that's very powerful, and it can unlock a part of this path to the Dhamma that can't be accessed by anything else, basically. So the Buddha had a lot of things to say about effort and how to do it, and he elaborated a lot on the ways that we can use this effort and the ways that a person can even have effort arise within them. And when we read the Buddha's teachings, we can realize that this is not the path that the Buddha taught is not any easy path. It's not something that we can just close our eyes and then start meditating a little bit and then reach Nibbana in a very peaceful way. It's really not as easy as it looks. And the Buddha put so much effort into explaining the path and explaining how to travel this path, how to go on this path in all of its many different directions, and just how to seep into this path. And the Buddha spent so much time teaching this that that we can see that he spent a lot of time teaching this concept of effort and how it works and how it drives basically everything in the Dhamma. And when I say that, I'll give you an example. There is this sutta, it's called Asi Visopama, which means it's the sutta that is about an analogy of venomous snakes. And that sutta is quite long, so I won't be able to explain the whole thing right now. But in that sutta, the Buddha explains how he uses an analogy for somebody who is practicing the Dhamma. And the analogy that he uses is, so basically, I mean, if I if I shorten the story, there's a person that is at the edge of a riverbank, and he can see the other side, and he can see the side that he is in, obviously. And when he looks at the other side of the river, he sees that it's very peaceful, it's very calm, there's nothing to be afraid of there. And it's much safer of a place than the place he is right now, which is on the other side of the river. And he realizes that this side of the river, the side that he's on, there's a lot of different problems. And you'll understand if you read that sutta with the analogy that there's snakes on the side of his river, on the side of the river that he's in. And he is in a very uncomfortable position because of those snakes and because of those problems on this side of the river. And so looking at the other side, he thinks, he understands that that is the place to go. And what he does is, but there's no easy place to go through the river. There's no bridge. There's no walkway. There's nothing. So what he does is he collects a lot of branches and ties them together with vines and makes like a homemade raft for himself. And he puts those things together, he puts it in the water, and then he jumps on the raft. Jumping on the raft, and I'm not talking about probably something that looks like very eloquently made. It's nothing like a boat. It's just a bunch of sticks and pieces of wood that he found and tried to assemble together with vines. And he puts it in the water, and then he jumps on the raft. And the Buddha says that the next thing he does is he uses his arms and his legs to paddle himself while on the raft to the other side of the river. And the river is not a slow flowing river. It's a very hard task, but he somehow does it and he reaches the other side. And so this analogy, the Buddha states that the analogy shows that the other side of the river is Nibbana. It's where safety is. And this side of the river is where the 5 aggregates of clinging are, which means, and it's also the place where all of the suffering is. This is where the eye is. This is where the ear is. This is where the nose is. This is where the tongue is. This is where suffering is. This is where suffering is made. And that's the side that he is on. And then the Buddha shows in the analogy that the raft that he pulls together is the Eightfold Path. And the Buddha also states that when he jumps into the water, when he goes into that dangerous water and he uses his hands and feet to travel across the water, that is the same as him using the 4 types of effort in order to travel the Eightfold Path. So just like a person uses a raft and uses his hands and feet to travel on that raft, to go on that raft, a person would use the Eightfold Path, which is the path to Nibbana, but they would need that 4 types of effort that we're going to explain right now. And the Buddha says that having this 4 types of effort is what is necessary in order to travel the Eightfold Path. So in that analogy, we can really understand that, because just because you have a raft, and just because you have the ability to swim, and just because it's afloat, doesn't mean that you can get yourself to the other side. It simply means that you have a raft and you have the ability to do so. But until you use your arms, until you use your legs, until you put some effort into it, the raft doesn't start moving. So in the same way, we know what the Eightfold Path is. We can learn about it. We can study it. We can memorize the stanzas that the Buddha teaches. We can memorize the suttas. But as long as we don't put any effort that raft will be in the same place that it has always been, and the raft won't change. So the path never changes. The Buddha can show the path, but if nobody tries, if nobody puts effort into it, then there is no way that the raft will move. And if the raft doesn't move, you don't move. And if you don't move, you are in the wrong place at the wrong time. So understanding the danger in that, understanding that analogy, the Buddha says that analogy in order for us to realize that the place that we are in, even though it might seem nice, it might seem like everything is okay, we might be healthy right now, we might be even happy right now, but understanding the core concepts of what Buddhism teaches, we can see that even though we might be in a state like that, even though we might be in a situation like that, there's a lot of suffering beneath the surface. And so we are on that side. We are on the side of suffering. So understanding that, we need to understand, okay, if this is the problem, then what can we do about it? And honestly, we can just go with the analogy. So when that person realizes he is in the side of danger, he quickly looks for this one thing. He gets in his mind that that he can use something to help him get across. And he takes sticks and vines and puts them together and then makes himself the raft. And honestly, in that analogy, we can realize that, like, even though the Eightfold Path exists, even though the Buddha has taught it, a person doesn't really get to use it. They don't really get to understand it. They can't really manipulate it. They can't use it as something instrumental for what they need to do if they do not piece those things together. So just because we heard, okay, there's 8 things in the Eightfold Path, okay, this is the first one, this is the second one, this is the third one, like, we can know that. But simply knowing that is not gonna cut it. And in getting to know that itself, it's just like looking for those branches, because they're not just right next to you. The raft wasn't already made. You need to go and listen to the Dhamma, listen to and study what you need to do in order to get this raft together, and study that Eightfold Path. And then once you understand that, then you go to the next step. So let's say we do, and we understand, okay, this is the danger that I am in. We realize that, okay, there's no danger on the other side, but there's a method of going to the other side, and it requires a raft. And so collecting that raft together, you get this Eightfold Path. And that is what the Buddha taught. And we, faithfully understanding that, faithfully realizing that this is the way to go, this is the correct way to pass through the river, a person collects that raft, or in other words, understands the Eightfold Path and tries to use it to get to where they need to go, tries to use it to get to Nibbana. And so in order to do that, let's say we have our raft together, we understand the Dhamma, we know what we want to do, we understand that it is dangerous here, we understand that it's peaceful on the other side, we understand that there's dangers in traveling in samsara, and we understand that there's a place to go called Nibbana. Understanding that, now we need to do the next step, which is going to putting in effort into actually using that Eightfold Path to get us to the other side. So it's not like a teleporting device. We have to understand the Eightfold Path and use it the right way in order to get into, in order to get the results that we want. So the Buddha explains that the main way to do that is through effort. And the Buddha says that the 4 limbs are just like the 4 types of effort. And so let me explain the 4 types of effort. The Buddha explains that there are 4 types of effort according to a system of wholesome and unwholesome deeds. And so let me explain that. In very simple terms, we can say that the 4 types of effort is just the first one being removing unwholesome things that have already arisen within us, which is, for example, like let's say, so a very subtle example would be if somebody has a problem with protecting a certain part of their virtue. Let's say they have a problem with stealing and they steal. That would be a unwholesome deed or some type of unwholesomeness within them that they have, and removing that unwholesome deed that has already arisen within them, that stealing that they already have this practice of, removing that habit, reducing that habit would be the first type of effort, which means there's something wrong with you right now. There's an unwholesome deed that you are doing right now, and you're trying to remove it. Okay, so that's the first one. And then the second one is, the Buddha says, upannanang papakanang akusalana Dhammanang pahanaya chandang janeti vayamati viryati viryang arambati. Okay? So the one that I just explained right now is what the Buddha explained as the second one, which is having an unwholesome deed within you right now and removing it. So the first one, if you're going to go chronologically, the Buddha says, Anupannanang papakanang akusalanang, which means an unwholesome part or an unwholesome deed within us that we don't have. Okay, so let's say there's a person that doesn't kill animals. Okay, if a person doesn't kill animals, this type of effort means he's not gonna start. So the last example we put is, there's a person that's already stealing, he's already in the bad, and within that bad, he's trying to remove it. Okay? So in this situation, they're in the good, at least for specifically that. They don't kill animals. And what they're trying to do is stay that way. They're trying to make sure that that bad thing that they don't have doesn't come near them, doesn't come into their life. Okay? So those are the first and second things. The first being not letting unwholesome deeds that you don't have arise within you, and removing the unwholesome deeds that you do have within you, being the second one. Okay? And then the Buddha says the third one, which is Anupannanang kusalanang dhammanang upadaya. Okay? Upadaya. Okay? And the Buddha says, so that means that we have these wholesome things within us, meaning we have good qualities that are already within us. So let's say there's a person, there's good qualities within us, and then there's also good qualities that we don't have within us. Okay, so let's say there's something that we don't have, meaning, let's say there's somebody who does not have a good concentration. Like, they try to meditate, but they can't focus on anything. And so, not having that ability within you, a person he puts a lot of effort into gaining that level of concentration. So it's something that they don't have, but they're trying to get it. Okay? And that means that they're bringing in something wholesome that they didn't have before. And then the fourth one is having some type of wholesome deed and improving it within you. Meaning, let's say there's somebody that has, let's just use that example. Let's say they have a very good concentration. They try to, instead of leaving it as is and not developing, they try to develop that further and further and further until they reach their goal. So there's 4 types of effort in that way. And if you look at this, let's say linearly, if you look at this in a graph system, if there's a line, okay, on a y-axis and an x-axis on a graph, and there's a line that does not go down and only either stays the same or goes up, then you can predict that there's only success happening to that line. There's only improvement in that line. So it only goes up. So in the same way, if somebody were to have wholesome deeds and make sure that the ones that they have stay and the ones that they do have keep growing, then there's no risk of failure within that person. As in, the overall result is always going to be little by little they improve and improve and improve. And even if it's just a small improvement, it's improving and it's never declining. And then also we can look at the same way, you can look at the same thing in the unwholesome part. So if there's a line that starts high, but it never increases and it always decreases or stays the same, then you can eventually assume that that line is going to go all the way down, because it never goes up and it will always have a declining slope. So in the same way, if somebody has, it doesn't matter actually how many unwholesome things a person has. It doesn't matter how unwholesome they are. If they can maintain that slope, which is never letting it rise, never letting the amount of unwholesomeness that you have right now rise more than what it was, and you always either try to keep it the same or try to push it down, try to remove those things, then we can assume that that person, even if they start at a very unwholesome state, little by little they remove all of those unwholesome states within them. And if they do both of those lines, meaning you have one line of wholesome deeds going up all the time and one line of unwholesome deeds going down all the time, then you have a person that is always developing and always removing their bad qualities, removing their bad deeds, unwholesomeness. So this concept is what the Buddha is trying to get to a person. And I said that in a very simple manner, or at least I tried to. But the reason why I did that is because a lot of people, they get a little bit overwhelmed when they see these thousands of suttas that the Buddha taught and all of these different methods, and there's enlightenment factors, there's the Eightfold Path, there's this, there's that, and there's just so many things, and they might seem overwhelming to somebody. But when it comes to developing the practice and developing through the Dhamma, if somebody can get these 4 things correct and they stay that way and they have an ability to actually go through with it, meaning not letting your wholesome deeds go down, not letting your unwholesome deeds go up, making sure you're on the right path, and just being able to do these 4 things, you are definitely on a much higher path than you were before. And I also really wanted to specifically talk about this part of the Dhamma in particular, because a lot of people, we learn about the Dhamma, or at least we come to an understanding of it. Even if you're a born Buddhist or something, you don't really come to an understanding of it until you have a certain age. And sometimes before we come to a good understanding of it, we might have, like, we've already lived a good portion of our life, and we might see mistakes in that life that we've lived. We might see bad characteristics that we have in ourselves. And a lot of people feel ashamed about it, and a lot of people think that they are not suitable to be practicing the Dhamma because of whatever past they might have, or whatever type of unwholesomeness they are in right now. But if we honestly just look at this part of the Dhamma right here, we can see that it doesn't matter how bad of a place you are in. If you are always going to go into the good direction, if you're always going to go into a good direction, and you're not letting whatever bad part of yourself develop, then you are developing as a person, and slowly but surely you are going on the right path, especially if you're practicing through the Buddha's teachings. So what I'm trying to say is, it doesn't matter where you are in life right now, as long as you have the capability of putting effort and desire to go into the right direction, you will definitely be someone who can and will develop in the Buddha's teachings. Namo Buddhaya. Theruvan Saranam.
You are listening to the Buddhist sermon, which was delivered by the Venerable Nugegoda Kalyanajoti Thero.
The Buddhist sermon this special full moon prayer day was sponsored by Mrs. Sita Gunavardhana and Mr. Sunil Udayakumara Gunavardhana of number 12 Barnsdale Road in Leicester, England. The purpose of the sponsorship was to invoke meritorious blessings on the late Mr. Justin Thissavijayasinghe, in memory of the late Mr. Justin Thissavijayasinghe, who resided in Japan, who passed away on the 8th of September in 2024 by an accident unexpectedly in Sri Lanka. His first year death anniversary is followed by a noon almsgiving and sermon on the 8th at the Dharmashoka Buddhist Viharya in Leicester in England. Furthermore, may all blessings be bestowed upon the children Indika Nuwan Gunavardhana, Subhashini Adhikari, Laksala Sudeshini Gunavardhana, Sumedha Bhandara Herat, Mahesh Gunavardhana, Niloka Gunavardhana, the grandchildren Gloria Dayanji, Tiana Mahim, Sonali Sinodia, Amisha Ishani, Adhika Bhandara, and Selene Gunavardhana, the family and relatives, granting them good health, long life and success in all their endeavors. Today's Buddhist sermon was delivered by the Venerable Nugegoda Kalyanajoti Thero.